They laughed at her shoes before they ever looked at her eyes. To them, she was a mistaken fabric and flesh. A woman in a fraying hoodie, sneakers scuffed beyond repair, sitting where no one like her belonged. They saw a shadow, a burden, a nobody. But before dawn broke, when panic clawed at every throat and the cabin begged for a miracle, that nobody would rise from seat 12C and speak 6 words that froze their blood. I flew F-18 second. Take me to the cockpit. The red-eye from London to New York droned steady, a silver bullet slicing through black skies at 36,000 feet. In business class, the glow of laptop screens shimmered across tailored suits, silk scarves, and crystal glasses. Men in polished leather shoes typed emails as if fortune depended on every keystroke. Women flipped through magazines, their diamond rings catching soft cabin light. A senator at the rear sipped bourbon like it was the only thing tethering him to power. And there, by the window seat 12C, sat Hoa Karen pale, slight, draped in gray cotton so threadbare it clung to her like memory. Her jeans were faded at the knees, her sneakers worn thin, the laces frayed and uneven. A hoodie pooled around her narrow frame, its cuffs unraveling. Her dark hair was pulled back in a careless knot, strands falling across her cheek. Cheap earbuds dangled at her neck, bought for coins at some gas station far away. She looked, to them, like a lost soul who had wandered into the wrong world. The passengers noticed. Oh, how they noticed. Their stares came like sharp edges, slicing into her skin. 2 seats over, a 6-year-old girl named Lily colored a pony across her tray table. Crayons rolled loose, dancing with turbulence. Her mother, Ellen, hair in a sleek bob, pearls heavy at her throat, wore a smile carved from old money. When Lily's paper cup tipped, water spilling onto Karen's sleeve, Ellen gasped, dabbing quickly with a napkin. "Oh, honey, be careful," she whispered, then softer, her lips tightening. "Sorry." But her eyes flicked over Karen's hoodie, her mouth pressing into a line. Across the aisle, Richard Holt, hedge fund titan in a pinstripe suit, leaned toward Derek, his Rolex-wearing protege. "She looks more homeless than first class," Richard murmured, not bothering to hide his grin. Derek chuckled. "Probably used points. No way she paid for this." Laughter low but loud enough. Karen didn't react. She turned toward the oval window, pulling her damp sleeve closer. The stars smeared across glass like distant fires. Her hands settled on the small backpack beneath her seat. Her fingers tightened once, knuckles whitening, then loosened. The flight attendant, Josh Young, crisp, his smile rehearsed, passed down the aisle. His gaze caught on Karen's earbuds, and for the briefest flicker, his brow arched. She didn't belong here. Not in this curated cage of power and polish. The whispers spread. A man in a navy blazer told his diamond-clad companion, "Charity case. Airline giveaway." She smirked, tilting her earrings to catch light. "Explains the sneakers. They look like they've fought a war." Their chuckles mingled with the hum of engines. Karen's thumb brushed a faded patch sewn into her backpack wings crossed with a sword. Nearly invisible. Meaningless to anyone who hadn't carried steel into the sky. The cabin lights dimmed. People reclined, faces washed in tablet glow. They sank into wine, into silence, into the easy rhythm of superiority. Except for Karen. She leaned into the window shadow, her reflection fractured, her hoodie a shield. Only Lily kept stealing glances. "She's nice, Mommy," the child whispered. "She didn't get mad about the water." Ellen patted her daughter's hand, lips tight, eyes never leaving Karen. Pity. Unease. Karen traced the patch again, lips pressed thin, and then she stilled. At first it was turbulence, a jolt that rattled glasses and made hearts leap. A pause, then calm. But minutes later, the intercom crackled, sharp as a blade. "This is your captain. We require immediate assistance. Is there a pilot on board?" The words detonated in the cabin. Silence. Then chaos. Passengers twisted in their seats, eyes wide, voices rising in frantic waves. Richard slammed his laptop shut. Claire Donovan, socialite influencer, dropped her phone, lipstick smeared where she'd bitten her lip. The senator's bourbon glass stilled, his jaw rigid. Josh hurried down the aisle, his face bloodless. Doctor? Pilot? Anyone, please? No one moved. No hand lifted. The air grew heavy, thick with fear, and then seat 12C stirred. Hoa Karen pulled back her hood. Her eyes opened, dark and calm, as though she had been waiting. She unzipped her backpack, tucking a folded paper into her pocket, fingertips brushing the wings and sword patch once more. Then she rose, sneakers soft against carpet, shoulders squared. Richard scoffed, his laugh sharp. Don't tell me she thinks she can help. Claire sneered. That girl? She probably can't even drive. Mark Ellison, tech CEO, chimed in, voice dripping. Sit down, sweetheart. Don't make this worse. A drunken man staggered into the aisle, blocking her path. Sit down, kid. Don't you dare risk us. His breath stank of wine and arrogance. Karen stopped, looked him dead in the eyes. She didn't speak, but her gaze cut through him steady, unyielding, unafraid. He faltered, stepped back. Silence crumbled his bravado. She walked on. Josh stammered. Ma'am, please. We need someone qualified. Karen's voice came low, unshaken. I flew F-18 second. Take me to the cockpit. The cabin froze. Laughter died in throats. Every heart stilled. From the back, Tom, a retired Marine with insignia worn thin on his jacket, lurched to his feet. His voice broke with awe. That's a Navy jet. Only naval aviators fly those. Gasps rippled. Josh's eyes widened. Then he nodded sharply. This way. The crowd parted, hushed now. Some reluctant, others too stunned to move. Karen walked past, her sneakers whispering against the carpet, yet her presence heavy enough to shift the air itself. Lily clutched her coloring book, her eyes bright with something stronger than fear. She's going to save us, she whispered. Her mother didn't answer. The cockpit door loomed like a verdict. Josh tapped the code and shouldered it open with a nervous breath. The air on the other side felt different, hotter, thinner, like the plane itself was sweating. The captain sagged in his seat, his headset crooked, eyes glazed with a feverish sheen. The co-pilot badge, reading Ryan C., gripped the controls with both hands, knuckles a chalky white. Alerts whispered and then barked, a rising chorus of beeps that set teeth on edge. Ryan's gaze flicked from the instruments to Karen's hoodie, then to her shoes, then back again, cataloging and dismissing. Ma'am, he said, voice taut, this is not the time for... It's exactly the time, she answered, sliding into the left seat like that chair had always been hers. What have you got? He hesitated. The plane shuddered. One of the annunciators flashed amber, then green again. Over the intercom, a ripple of alarm from the cabin swelled and died. Captain fainted, Ryan said at last. Pulse weak. We're skirting convective cells, autopilot's holding, but it's temperamental. He swallowed. I asked for a pilot. I didn't ask for a resume. Karen's hands moved not frantic, not tentative, just certain. She checked attitude, airspeed, heading, flight level, read the sky like Braille. We're too close to the worst of it, she murmured, half to herself. She's climbing over warm air, she'll kick. As if on cue, the jet jolted. Overhead bins rattled. In the reflection of the windscreen, lightning stitched the night in silent threads. Ryan tried again, softer now. Who are you? Hoa, Karen exhaled. Someone who knows what to do when the sky bares its teeth. Her left thumb brushed the ring on her hand, a worn band that didn't glitter, it remembered. Something inside her steadied, a weight, an oath, a promise that hadn't expired with the man who'd placed it there. Aviate, she said, low and even. Navigate, communicate, the old order of survival. The words were a spine. First, we fly the airplane. She coaxed the jet a hair to starboard, fingers feathering the controls. The turbulence answered, less a punch now than a warning hand pressed to the shoulder. Karen tuned her ears to the different pitches in the metal and the wind, the way a musician hears when a note is choking. Reduced to turbulence penetration speed, she said. We don't fight the storm, we give her fewer bones to break. Ryan obeyed partly because she sounded like a checklist, partly because something in him, something trained and untrainable, recognized the shape of competence. He dialed. The engine sighed lower. Karen reached for the radio. New York Center, this is, Ryan began, voice catching. Night Viper 1-2, Karen said without flinching. The call sign slipped out like a heartbeat. Static hissed. Then a voice, incredulous, almost human beneath the protocol. Say again? This is Night Viper 1-2. Request vectors around convective buildups. Medical emergency in the left seat. Co-pilot effective. I have the aircraft. A pause as long as 5 years. Night Viper 12, the controller said, and the careful neutrality cracked. We had you, Kaya. Then hurried, professional again. Copy. Turn right heading 260. Descend and maintain flight level 340. You're painting heavy returns at your 11. Karen rolled the heading smoothly. The jet acquiesced. 260. Level 340. She read back. Her breath settled into the rhythm she'd learned above deserts and oceans, in nights that smelled like metal and heat, under stars so bright they made their own weather. Beside her, Ryan dared a glance. Whatever he'd seen in the cabin, a woman frayed at the edges, a hoodie and a hush, was gone. In this chair, in this light, she looked like something else. Not larger. Note Lude. More distilled. Night Viper? He asked, almost whispering. She didn't look away from the instruments. There was a time when that name meant I didn't have to explain myself. People said you were a ghost, he murmured. People say a lot of things when they don't know who's listening. Thunder unfurled so close it felt inside the bones. For a beat, the sky stuttered white. Karen didn't flinch. She had flown into nights where weather wasn't the worst thing that hunted you. And because the body remembers what the heart won't say, the past leaned in the desert base thrumming with heat, a squadron patch prickling on her shoulder, her CO's hand on her back. You're the knife we carry into the dark, Miller. A wry grin she'd only ever earned after air and earth finally agreed upon her. The long brief, the go code, the sharp, clean silence before the first turn, the wrong flash in the wrong place. Boom, then fire. Then the story they wrote when the black box didn't. She let the memory pass like wake turbulence. Don't wrestle it. Ride it out. A light touch to the thrust levers. She wants to climb, Karen said. She thinks taller is safer. It isn't. We go under the anvil. Thread the eye. Ryan breathed, yes, ma'am. The honorific surprised them both. Not ma'am, she said, a corner of her mouth quirking. Karen, Ryan, he said, quick, as if offering a rope. Another alert. The autopilot clicked off with a petulant tone, the yoke nudging in her hands like a skittish colt. She took the weight neatly, almost tender. Manual, she said. She'll trust me more if I show her I'm not afraid. Through the door, the cabin swelled and fell, a living thing with one terrified voice stitched from many. Somewhere in that sea of fear, a child's voice. She'll save us. Karen pictured pigtails and crayons, the plane drawn with a sun too big, too bright. She pictured the mother's pearls and the tight line of her mouth, the apology that had been more reflex than remorse. She flew. The radar painted the world in bruised colors, green melting to yellow, melting to red, a wound with a heartbeat. See that gap? Karen pointed. Narrow as a needle's eye, but if we enter at 260 and slide 255 on the other side, there's smooth air waiting like a promise. Like a promise, Ryan repeated, hands hovering but not interfering. He was learning the anatomy of her sentences, that every word carried weight and none of it wasted. They entered the gap. The airplane trembled, searching for a shoulder to lean on. Easy, Karen murmured. It was not to the jet alone. Easy now. Lightning veined the clouds. For a breath, the world was all bones. New York Center, Night Viper 1-2. In the corridor. Request vectors direct to nearest suitable field. We'll need medics on arrival. Night Viper 1-2, roger. Newark available. Winds calm, runway 22 left. Your priority. Priority. A word that could be a bomb or a blade. Tonight, it was permission. Vectors to 22 left. Karen read back, and the path drew itself in her mind in clean white chalk. The jet broke through into stillness, so sudden it felt sacred. The stars reappeared, not arrogant now but patient. Below, distant cities stitched the earth with gold. Ryan laughed once. Disbelief making it sound like a sob. How did you— Sometimes the sky gives you a door, she said. You just have to believe it's yours to walk through. He stared, as if he could memorize the cadence of her calm and carry it for later. ATC's voice softened. Night Viper 1, 2. Confirm souls on board and fuel, Karen answered cleanly. Numbers with no tremor in them. Copy, the controller said then. It's good to hear you, Night Viper. Karen's lips pressed together. The old call sign felt like a uniform she'd folded into a drawer and promised to never touch again. But the sky had its own archive, and tonight it had pulled her file. Tower, she said, shifting frequencies when prompted. We'll need a straight-in. Captain still unconscious. Straight-in approved, Tower replied, all business. Emergency equipment standing by. Out beyond the glass, runway lights bloomed a necklace cast upon dark water. Approach set itself up in her bones. She trimmed, verified flaps, checked gear. Behind her, muffled through the door, the cabin's fear had altered timbre. It wasn't quiet, not yet. Panic never surrendered the stage that easily. But awe had entered the room, and shame had cracked a few proud spines. Certain voices, the loudest ones from earlier, were missing. Karen could almost feel their silence, as if it were a tangible weight. Before we drop through, Ryan said, and his voice tumbled over itself, words trying to be as quick as his awe. Were you really? Are you? Night Viper 12, she finished for him. Not a boast, not an apology. Once, then the reports were more convenient than the truth. Ryan nodded, like a man who had seen, finally, how thin the line could be between a tidy story and a real one. Gear down, Karen said. The clunk thrum of metal meeting air sang through the frame. 3 green. She breathed in and felt the purr of it, stable and right. Flaps 25. Checklists complete. Ryan's voice was steady now, not because he had stopped being afraid, but because he had decided to walk with his fear instead of let it drag him. Reset, Karen said. We're a feather. Let's be a feather. On short final, Newark rose to meet them, runway lights receding in perfect perspective. Pennsylvania PI lamps steady white and red like a balanced heartbeat. The plane rode a thin river of air. Karen kept her hands light as if holding a sleeping child. 500, the radio altimeter called. Stable, Ryan said. It sounded like gratitude. 200. Karen felt the crosswind's sly hand and corrected it with a touch that was more grace than math. In the corner of her eye, the ring on her finger caught the faintest light. It didn't glitter, it anchored. 50, 40, 30. Not yet, she whispered. The tires wanted the earth, but the airplane needed one last breath of sky. 20, 10, she flared. The wheels kissed the runway, no slam, no drama, just the clean punctuation of arrival. Reverse thrust came in like a relieved sigh. The aircraft slowed, obedient and unharmed. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan's voice went over the PA, breaking only once. We are on the ground! A sound rose from the cabin cheers. Yes, but threaded with something raw. Sobs, prayers, a child's clear, ringing, she did it, that lifted like a bell. Karen didn't close her eyes. She let the sound move through her without collecting in her chest, where hard things sometimes calcified. She taxied when Tower told her, turned where the marshaller's wands coaxed. Medical is ready, ground control said. They'll meet you on the stand. Copy, she replied. The word, so simple, felt like a ceremony. They set the brake. Ryan removed his headset with hands that shook, now that he was allowed to. You saved them, he said, like testing a truth he expected to disintegrate in air. We saved them, Karen corrected. You stayed. He stared. Then he laughed again, that disbelieving sound, but softer. You stayed longer. Karen's smile was small and tired and entirely alive. She looked sideways at the captain, breathing, color returning. She thought of the ring, the patch, the folded paper tucked in her pocket, the letter edges velveted by time, the lines inside written in a hand that would never hold a pen again. She didn't read it, hadn't in years. Carrying it was enough. Josh cracked the cockpit door. For a second, his practiced smile wavered, unmasked. He's breathing. Medics are boarding. And, his eyes went wet and shiny. And I'm sorry. Karen nodded once. She didn't ask what for. There were too many answers. The door opened wider. Beyond it, faces blurred apology and awe, shame and relief, all of it messy and human. Somewhere, a child with pigtails stood on the seat, holding a coloring page up as if art could become a medal. Ryan drew in a breath like a swimmer cresting water and whispered, "Night Viper 12. Karen's gaze met his. "Hoa Karen," she said. "Let's not forget the name my mother gave me." He nodded, corrected. "Ho, Karen." Outside, the ambulance lights painted the tarmac a moving red-blue. The storm, pressed back to the horizon, flashed one last sullen grin and then shrugged itself apart. The night in return offered a thin milk of dawn. Karen unclipped the harness. Stood. The cockpit was too small for everything in her. The sky rarely is. "Ready?" Ryan asked. She caught the ring with her thumb. Felt the steadiness. "Always," she said, and took the first step back toward the world that had written her off first as poor, then as dead. It would have to learn her name again. The cabin door opened to the night, and air poured in heavy with jet fuel, sirens, and the scent of wet tarmac. The storm still muttered at the horizon, distant lightning crawling like a ghost that hadn't learned it was already dead. Passengers spilled into the jet bridge in broken lines. Some clutched handbags like lifeboats, others their phones, already framing shaky apologies in 1,000 whispered calls. A few reached for cameras, desperate to control the narrative before truth claimed it. But all eyes found her. Hoa Karen emerged from the cockpit as quietly as she had risen from seat 12. Hoodie still faded, sneakers still scuffed. Backpack still small, its strap slipping from her shoulder. For a heartbeat, the crowd of them hesitated. They had laughed, whispered, dismissed, and cursed. Now the same mouths parted for words they couldn't find. A child's voice broke the silence. "Mommy, it's her." Lily, cheeks flushed, coloring book pressed to her chest, pointed with both hands, bouncing on her toes. Her crayon drawing of a plane, sun blazing overhead, trembled with her grip. "She saved us," the girl cried. Ellen, her pearl necklace crooked, pulled her daughter close. Her lips trembled with the weight of something she hadn't practiced in years, humility. Karen's eyes softened, just for Lily. Then, like a shadow, the warmth vanished. She walked forward. Flashbulbs exploded in the terminal. Reporters swarmed with microphones raised like bayonets. "Ma'am, your name? Who are you? Are you military? Were you the pilot?" She said nothing. Her hood slipped lower, covering her face, her silence more commanding than their shouted demands. Passengers pushed past her, Claire Donovan with her phone held high, face angled carefully to conceal the smear of her lipstick. Richard Holt yanking his tie loose, barking into his earpiece that he'd explain later. Susan Grayson pulling her assistant close like a shield. But the cameras weren't on them. They were on the woman they had called homeless. Karen's backpack brushed against her leg, and her fingers reached instinctively for the keychain, a small jet of tarnished silver. She tucked it out of sight, though one man caught the glimmer. Tom, the retired Marine, stood at the edge of the chaos. His shoulders squared. His right hand rose, trembling, into a salute sharp enough to cut glass. The crowd hushed. Reporters, passengers, even police froze to watch a man old enough to be her father stand like a soldier before her. Karen stopped, met his eyes. For the first time, she returned the salute. Slow, precise, the kind that could break a man's heart. Engines roared outside the glass. Black SUVs pulled up, doors slamming in unison. Men in dark uniforms stepped out, boots heavy, their eyes scanning with the discipline of war. One man strode ahead, broad-shouldered, his cap tucked under one arm. His face was all stone until his gaze found her. "Night Viper 12, he said, his voice carrying across the terminal. "We thought you were Kia." The words detonated like another storm. Passengers gasped. Some clutched their chests. Richard Holt dropped his phone. It shattered on the tile. Claire Donovan stumbled back into a reporter's camera, her mouth hanging open. Susan Grayson turned away, her glasses fogging as her shoulders slumped. Karen's hand rose again, a salute clean and unwavering. The colonel returned it, boots clicking as he halted in front of her. His eyes softened just enough. "Welcome home, Captain," he said. A reporter shouted from the back, desperate to be heard. "Who is she?" Colonel Daniels turned, his voice cutting through the noise. A hero. That's all you need to know. The echo of his words settled like ash. The passengers, those who had sneered, mocked, whispered, looked at her now with faces bent under shame. Richard's lips parted, but nothing came. His hands shook, fingers clawing for a tie that wasn't choking him. It was his pride. Claire tried to pose again, but the cameras had already found her earlier cruelty. Susan murmured to her assistant, "Don't let this leak," though her voice cracked with the futility of it. Karen didn't spare them a glance. She had seen men confess with their silence before. Her eyes found Lily again. The little girl waved her drawing high, tears in her eyes. "You saved us," she squeaked, the words piercing through shame and noise alike. Karen's lips curved just a whisper of a smile, barely there. For Lily, and only Lily. Then she turned back to the colonel. "Let's go," she said simply. He nodded. By dawn, the story had burned across every network, every feed. Ghost pilot saves flight. Night Viper 12, declared dead, returns in the sky. But the headlines weren't kind to everyone. Richard Holt's sneer was captured on a passenger's phone. "She looks homeless." Within hours, the clip went viral. Hashtags trended. Number, classless in the clouds. By evening, his firm issued a statement. By morning, he was fired. Claire Donovan's live stream mid-flight, mocking Karen's sneakers, spread faster than any sponsorship deal she had ever signed. Brands pulled contracts one by one. Influencers' shame for tirade blared across tabloids. Susan Grayson's shouts, "Don't put our lives in her hands," were immortalized in shaky footage. Her law firm distanced itself overnight. Clients canceled meetings. A career crumbled under the weight of her own voice. Even Senator Harold Vance, bourbon glass still warm in his hand, faced whispers among donors. He froze when action was needed. But Karen? She vanished from the cameras. While the world screamed her name, Hoa Karen slipped through back corridors, her backpack slung over one shoulder. The colonel offered an escort, but she shook her head. "I didn't come back for them to own me again," she said. He understood. Soldiers always did. Outside, dawn cracked the horizon, painting the wet tarmac in gold. She walked alone, each step steady, her hood still shadowing her face. Reporters called after her. Security trailed. But she didn't stop. She touched the ring on her hand once, the way some touch a rosary. A memory bloomed bare feet on a beach at sunset, a man's laugh mingling with the sea, his arm around her shoulders. "You're my wingman," he had told her. And she had believed him. Until the day the call came and the folded flag replaced him. She had buried that life. Buried Night Viper 12. But the sky had refused to bury her. In the terminal, Lily tugged at her mother's hand. "Where is she going?" Ellen bent, voice trembling. "She's going where heroes go, sweetheart." But Karen wasn't walking toward glory. She was walking back into silence, into a life the world would never fully understand. The crowd parted, whispers trailing after her like shadows. Some called her ghost. Some called her miracle. She called herself nothing at all. Her steps carried her through the exit, away from the storm, away from the shame, away from the names they had thrown at her like stones. The sky beyond the glass was clearing now. Pale blue, boundless, waiting. Hoa Karen didn't look back, because the only direction she had ever trusted was forward. The world did not forget overnight. By the end of the week, Hoa Karen was no longer just a passenger in a faded hoodie. She was a headline, a storm, a question etched into every conversation about class, humility, and the quiet weight of judgment. Clips from the flight circled the globe grainy footage of her standing in the aisle. Voice calm and certain. "I flew F-18 second. Take me to the cockpit." Those 6 words were replayed until they burned themselves into collective memory. Talk shows debated. News anchors analyzed. Hashtags surged. Memes sprouted. Politicians tried to weave her into speeches about courage and unity. Companies slapped her name on ad campaigns without asking. And yet, through all the noise, the woman at the center of it did not appear. She had walked away that morning and melted back into the silence of her own choosing. Richard Holt's downfall was merciless. One clip, 7 seconds long, his mocking, "She looks more homeless than first class," ended his career. Board members issued their perfunctory statements, but no language could scrub the venom of contempt captured on video. He disappeared from Manhattan offices, from golf courses, from every boardroom that once echoed with his voice. Claire Donovan's empire crumbled in public. Her sponsors severed ties one by one, and her followers, once fawning, turned sharp and unforgiving. Screenshots of her posts were stitched against her sneer on the flight, captions reading, "Influence without empathy is nothing." Susan Grayson's law practice collapsed quietly but decisively. Clients withdrew, unsettled not just by her fear, but by the cruelty of her words. "Don't put our lives in her hands." That one sentence had undone decades of legal precision. Even Senator Vance, who had done nothing at all, found that his inaction clung to him like smoke. Donors whispered, reporters prodded. In politics, silence was not neutral, it was damning. One by one, those who had laughed or sneered or doubted carried their punishment not from law or military, but from the public conscience they had underestimated. In a small rented apartment 2 towns away from the airport, Hoa Karen sat at a wooden table with a single lamp burning. The world searched for her, but she sat hidden, barefoot, her hoodie folded beside her. On the table lay a piece of paper yellowed at the edges. The one she had carried in her pocket throughout the flight. It was a letter, written in a man's hand, the loops uneven. The ink faded. "Karen, if you're reading this, it means I didn't come back. You were always braver than you believed. If you ever find yourself in the dark, remember the sky will still answer to you. Always." Her thumb brushed the ink. The words had lived in her pocket for years, too heavy to read, too sacred to discard. That night, she read them again, and again, until the lines blurred with the salt of her own tears. Meanwhile, Lily wouldn't let go of her coloring book. At home, the page with the plane and the sun stayed taped above her bed. "She saved us," Lily told her friends, her teachers, anyone who would listen. Miss Karen flew the plane when no one else could. Her mother, Ellen, heard it so many times she could no longer bear the weight of her own silence. She remembered the way she had looked at Karen's hoodie with disdain, the way she had shushed her daughter's curiosity with embarrassment instead of kindness. Ellen thought of her pearls, of the practiced smile of her class, and she thought of the woman in 12C carrying the storm alone. For the first time in years, Ellen wept, not out of fear, but out of shame. Weeks later, an envelope arrived at a P.O. box that Karen hadn't opened in months. Stamped with a seal she knew by touch before she even read it. Department of Defense, reinstatement ceremony, recognition of service. Inside was a formal invitation, an offer to honor her, to return Night Viper 12 to the light, to make her story official. Karen stared at it long into the night. In the silence, she touched the ring on her finger. The worn metal, still warm against her skin, whispered of a life she had buried alongside the man she had loved, the missions that had claimed pieces of her, the sky that had both given and stolen. At dawn, she folded the letter and slid it back into its envelope. She placed it beside the old one, the one written by her husband. 2 truths resting together. She did not answer the invitation. Some names are too sacred to parade. On a morning months later, a child walking to school with her mother stopped at the edge of a small municipal airfield. She pointed to a single-prop trainer taxiing down the runway. The pilot wore jeans and a hoodie, dark hair pulled into a messy knot, scuffed sneakers pressing the rudder pedals. The child thought she looked familiar. The trainer lifted gently into the sky, wings flashing in sunlight. It climbed and curved with a grace that seemed to belong more to a bird than to a machine. The mother didn't notice, but the child Lily smiled and whispered, "It's her." High above, where no judgment could reach, Hoa Karen felt the sky open to her once again. Not in war, not in duty, not in headlines, but in the quiet truth that she was, and always had been, a pilot. The story of the ghost in seat 12C did not fade. They told it in classrooms when speaking of prejudice. They told it in military halls when speaking of courage. They told it in airports when storms delayed flights and passengers grew restless. They told it as a warning. Do not measure a person by their shoes, their clothes, their silence. They told it as a promise. Sometimes the one you dismiss is the one who will save you. And always, always, they told it with her name. Not Anna Miller. Not Night Viper 12. Hoa Karen. The woman they called homeless. The pilot they called dead. The ghost who walked among them alive. On the anniversary of that flight, a small article appeared in the corner of a newspaper. No photo, no interview. Just a line of text. Witnesses at a local airfield reported seeing a woman flying a Cessna at dawn. She landed, refueled, and disappeared without giving her name. One mechanic swore he saw a tiny silver jet dangling from her keychain. The world argued if it was her, but the sky already knew. Hoa Karen walked forward, as she always had. Not for applause, not for vindication, not for history. But because flight was hers, and no storm not in the clouds, not in the hearts of men would ever take it away again.